Congratulations for listening to NonTheology, the show here to fill the podcast-shaped hole in your heart. You can visit us online at nontheology.com, and though we're not likable in real life, we are likable on Facebook at facebook.com/nontheology. I am the Pope of the podcast, Gabe, and I'm joined by the anti-Pope of the podcast, Eric.
Yeah, the anti-Pope. That's funny. Yeah, anyways, shut up for a second. Gabe and I both...
Wait, Eric, you're not going to talk about celebrity gossip, are you?
No, well, yes. Something interesting happened in the news recently, which was not interesting at all to me. But that's kind of why I want to talk about it, because I just can't wrap my mind around why anybody would care. But LeBron James, Gabe said I was going to talk some celebrity gossip, which I wouldn't obviously normally do if you've listened to the show. But LeBron James met Kate Middleton not that long ago. And before I read the story, I wouldn't have been able to tell you who Kate Middleton was. I would have thought that's some celebrity, an actress, perhaps.
That's the person who played Morpheus in The Matrix, right?
No, it's not. and so LeBron James, who's a basketball player, if you don't know, very famous, probably the most famous athlete in the world right now. And he touched her shoulder, and you're not supposed to do that because she's a part of the British royal family. And that made a bunch of people really angry. And there was some quotes that I read that I just thought were just unbelievably stupid. And there's this guy he's an etiquette coach or something like that for the Daily Mail, which as far as I can tell, the Daily Mail is essentially Fox News in Britain. It's basically their conservative propaganda machine that doesn't actually care about real journalism and just basically pumps out whatever stories they can to fire up their base and make their base hate the opposition.
Obama!
Right, exactly. And so this guy for the Daily Mail, who's like an etiquette coach, says, Americans are much more tactile than we Brits. This is another example of American being far too touchy-feely with British royalty. You'd think they'd have learned by now. And I'm like, go fuck yourself is the only thing I can think of when he says, you'd think they'd have learned by now. Because really...
I just want to put in a word for our British listeners. That was not a very good British accent.
It sure wasn't. It sure wasn't. I say, Gabriel...
The Queen's glory is rubbish.
I'd say, Gabriel.
Biscuits, tea, and roundabouts.
Biscuits, tea, and roundabouts. I'd say, Gabriel. You think that Americans have learned by now not to touch our royalty? But, so, yeah, he says, you'd think they'd have learned by now in reference to the fact that we're not supposed to touch the royal family. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, who gives a shit about that anyway? The idea of royal family is just so antiquated and stupid and just never really made sense in the first place. But now I just feel like in this day and age, how could that even be something that anybody is concerned about at all whatsoever? I don't know. I guess I'm not British enough.
No, you're definitely
know where
not.
They're coming from on this, but it just doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me. And that kind of got me thinking about just how much I hate people who get really, really, really uptight about etiquette and stuff like that. Because etiquette coaches are a real job in the United States that you can get, especially like in the South. Like in Borat, in the Sacha Baron Cohen movie Borat, like they go troll an etiquette coach, which I think is hysterical.
Yeah, that is a funny scene from that movie.
That's all you deserve to have happen to you if you're an etiquette coach, is you just deserve to be trolled mercilessly.
To get made fun of by Sacha Baron Cohen, yeah.
Right, yeah. If you're out to dinner or whatever and you really care about somebody like puts their elbows on the table or while they're eating, or if you really care about whether or not the salad fork is on the right side of the dinner fork and whether or not this dish is positioned properly at the place setting and blah, 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 who cares? This may come as a shock to some of our listeners, but like I have actually once or twice in my life been out on a date with a girl, and like I'm good at, knowing how to treat a lady when I go out with her. I'm not saying that, you can just be rude and ridiculous or whatever, but really there's a point where you're talking about things that just don't fucking matter at all to anyone. At least they don't matter to anybody who I care to be around, because if you care about those things, I probably hate you.
Except for those girls who you were on the dates with who kept thinking to themselves, God, it's so embarrassing to be around this guy.
No, I mean, you're just making fun of me. I get it.
Did he just empty a bowl of soup into his pocket?
Yes, no, I don't mean that. I just think it's okay to just do completely ridiculous things out in public all the time, just because why not? That's not what I'm saying. But I guess I wanted to sort of ask you, like, do you see any value at all in like that sort of etiquette coach or etiquette advisor or anything like that? Like, would you ever think about having an etiquette advisor come over to tell you how to host a dinner party or something, to make sure that your table settings were correct and that all of your table manners were right and everything like that? Is that something you would ever do?
I think that an etiquette coach might be actually really useful for, say, international relations sort of things. So in the case of Borat, it might make a lot of sense, but in general, no, I wouldn't want myself to go to an etiquette coach.
Yeah, those kind of things annoy me. Anyways.
And I definitely would not want to go to an etiquette coach who is teaching me etiquette from the South.
Oh, God, yeah, fuck that. Jeez, no. No. Oh, I don't like the South. Apologies to our one listener who lives south of the Mason-Dixon line in the United States.
I hereby revoke that apology.
Well, if there is somebody down there who listens, I wouldn't want to offend that one person. But at the same time, that person is definitely the exception and not the rule to that area of the country. So that's some thoughts I was having the other day about LeBron James. So I guess we can go ahead and move on to the next bit of the show. Is that me also, Gabe?
That's you as well. We are carrying on a tradition that we started an episode ago, but then got cut from the episode, so none of our listeners actually know about it. But Eric, we are going to be talking about some Bible stories. Tell me a little bit about this. What's going on here?
Organized religion was a much bigger part of my childhood than it was of Gabe's childhood. If you've listened to the first couple episodes of this show, that's something that you'll already know. And I have some books and stuff that are just laying around in I don't live with my parents anymore, and I haven't for some time. But in the room that used to be my room, there's a lot of my stuff still in there. I was in there, not that long ago, and I found some old books and stuff that are of interest to the show. One of those books is called, it says in the title, it says New St. Joseph First Children's Bible by Father Lovasic, SVD. I don't know what SVD means.
Some venereal disease.
Gross. I don't think that's it. But it's basically this cute little Bible. It's 4 inches by 5 inches, and it's not very thick because all of the chapters are just reduced down into one page of maybe 4 paragraphs. And it's just a very sort of juvenile explanation of what happened. And being that it's a children's Bible, it's very interesting to me to sort of see how the author chose to write about the bits where it's obvious that God is a maniac and has killed a lot of people or something like that. How do I explain to the kids that all of the Egyptians who were chasing Moses and his people through the Red Sea got drowned when God saw fit to crash the ocean down behind Moses and his people and kill all of those guys, stuff like that.
How do I explain to these kids about how God killed all the ponies and puppies and kittens in Noah's flood?
Yeah, exactly. And it's even more sort of comical when I pair it with, and I'm not going to read very much from this book, but Gabe got me as a Christmas present a book, which you can feel free to check out, and I'm sure Gabe will throw a link in the episode description on the website. But the book is called Drunk with Blood, God's Killings in the Bible by Steve Wells. And it basically goes through the whole Bible, and it's really interesting. I have not sat down to read it all the way through, but he just goes into detail with the passages and sort of explanations about every time somebody in the Bible gets killed by either God or the devil. And on the back of the book, it says, who has killed more, Satan or God? Biblical numbers only, no estimates. And the count for God is 2,476,636 people. And Satan has 10. And sort of the quote on the back is a quote from Deuteronomy. It says, I kill, I wound, I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh. And that's Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 39 through 42. And so it's really funny to look at the children's Bible and read the passages from the children's Bible, and then open up Drunk with Blood and see what the Bible actually says, the direct quotes from the Bible. So I thought maybe it would be a good opportunity to talk about Samson, who is an interesting cat from the Bible. And I use the word cat figuratively, not literally. As far as I know, there's not talking cats in the Bible. There are talking snakes, things of that nature.
And talking bushes.
Yeah, that happens too. A lot of people base their lives around what that talking bush had to say. It's their moral code. But anyways, so Samson was this guy, and I don't even really know why God chooses Samson to fight his battles for him or whatever. But at some point in the Old Testament, after Moses and his people have been led out of Egypt, and they've gone around that area killing a lot of people and conquering cities and murdering people and taking women to be their personal slaves and things of that nature, there's this dude Samson, and God sees fit to grant Samson with superhuman strength. Like he can kill a lion by himself, or he can kill 1,000 men with the jawbone of an ass, which I think is hysterical. Yeah, that's in the Bible. Samson kills 1,000 dudes with the jawbone of an ass. And then he gets thirsty later on, so God makes water come out of this jawbone so that Samson can have a drink of water after he's done murdering all these people.
Good job, Samson. Now drink out of this jawbone.
Yeah. So Samson has two weaknesses. One is he's got long hair, and if you cut his hair, he loses his strength. Why does that make any sense at all for any reason? I don't know. That seems like a really stupid thing to make happen if you're God. And he also, like a lot of guys I know, like myself sometimes, he's way too into untrustworthy women. So he's really horny all the time. He doesn't know how to pick them, and he's got long hair that gives him his strength.
Yeah, this actually sounds a lot like you, Eric.
So eventually the story ends with like Samson falls in love with this chick named Delilah, but Delilah is actually in league with his enemies, and she figures out the secret to his strength, gets his hair cut, he gets taken prisoner, and then he grows his hair back, knocks over a temple, and kills himself with like 3,000 other people. That's how the story ends. But anyways, here's what the First Children's Bible by Father Lovasik has to say about Samson. So this is chapter 13.
I think it's pronounced Father Love Shack.
I think you're wrong. Although just because I'm pronouncing it incorrectly doesn't mean I know how it is. Anyway, shut up. So chapter 13. God gives Samson great strength to help his people. During the early period in Canaan, God raised up judges to rule the Israelites and protect them from the surrounding peoples. One of the judges was Samson. God gave Samson great strength to fight against the heathen Philistines.
Heathens.
Samson was able to kill a lion with his bare hands, and he continually protected the people. One day, the Philistines captured Samson and cruelly put out his eyes. Jesus Christ.
What the hell?
Yeah. Then they prepared to offer a sacrifice to their fish god Dagon. 6,000 people gathered in his temple, eating and drinking. As Samson stumbled in, led by a little boy, the people laughed at him. Samson reached the pillars that held up the roof and prayed for strength. He pulled with all his might, and the pillars came down with a crash. All the people were crushed, and Samson died with the Philistines. So that's the children's Bible. That's what they have to say about Samson.
Even that's kind of a messed up characterization of someone. Like, I can't imagine God being pretty pleased about all this weird stuff Samson's doing.
Well, he's the one who gave him the strength to do it, though, is the thing. Like, so he's got to be pleased with it, or else he would have just been like, oh, maybe Samson's not so strong anymore. You know? But anyways, so in Drunk with Blood, God's Killings in the Bible by Steve Wells, I'm just going to read the title of the chapter about that last bit there. So it's called Samson Killed 3,000 in a Suicide Terrorist Attack. So, like, it's sort of depending on how you want to frame the story, you can use a few different words to sort of, make that happen. But yeah, basically, I mean, God in the Old Testament has a propensity for killing people who are like not his people, or people who like believe in a different God than he believes in. And so all these people, obviously, as the children's Bible so eloquently put it, they're these heathens who pray to this fish god. So the real God is like, well, fuck that. These people can't be allowed to live. So he grants Samson great strength to knock over a temple where there's literally thousands of them gathered and they all die.
6,000 people, yeah.
So that is I think a useful activity to read the children's Bible and then read the sort of non-children's version of it, the sort of secular view of it, I suppose. So we'll revisit that in the future and see where that takes us, I suppose.
Yeah, so that'll be kind of a recurring segment on the show, is comparing side by side the account given in the children's Bible as well as the account given in Drunk with Blood by Steve Wells.
I actually have another children's Bible, which doesn't reduce it down quite so much. It takes a little bit longer to tell the stories. So I may take a look through that and see if there's any good bits in there that are amusing to me, and see if I can't get some more good bits for that segment of the show. Do we have a name for that segment of the show?
Eric Eats the Bible.
Sure.
I don't know.
Even though I didn't actually eat.
Actually, no. Every page that Eric reads from, he tears it out of the Bible and eats it.
Yeah, well, anyway, so that's my bit.
Well, that's fun. I'm looking forward to more of this because I do enjoy making fun of the Bible.
It's pretty funny.
Well, the rest of this episode is actually going to be a listener-suggested topic, and it's going to have a Catholic theme to it.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Now, this is fun because the Catholic Church is just bursting at the seams with great, great topics to hash out, and there are lots of things that we could say about the Catholic Church, including child molestation scandals, child molestation cover-up scandals, The regressive socio-theological policies of refusing to ordain women, insisting on demonizing normal expressions of human sexuality, including but not limited to premarital sex, homosexuality, and using birth control.
Right.
Pumping tons of resources into third world countries to spread the lie that condoms are the cause of AIDS.
I was just going to say you can ask sub-Saharan Africa how they feel about the whole contraceptive issue, because if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the only, or maybe the only area in the world where like the AIDS rates, like AIDS per capita, is actually going up.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure it's because the Catholic Church has been telling people that condoms don't work there, which is awful. That's unbelievably terrible that they're doing that.
I would agree. Now, all of these topics could be on the list, but for today, we're only going to be talking about the papacy and the Pope and some of the crazy things that people have done while they were Pope.
Nice. I like that.
I like it too. It should be fun. Eric, do you want to start off with just a little bit of Pope trivia?
Sure, yeah. And there's a time in my life when I may have done a little bit better at this, like back when I was in grade school and I actually had religion class. A lot of it was time spent talking about popes and what they did and things of that nature, because I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through 8th grade. But that stuff kind of got cataloged in my mind as not important
and probably not true.
Right, well, yeah, and also cataloged in the area of my mind where if you forget this, it won't matter. So,
unless you're on a podcast.
Right, yeah.
All right, so I've got 3 questions for you, Eric. Let's see how you do.
Probably not well, but let's go.
How many popes have there been?
Oh, geez.
And as a hint, if you're ever trying to answer Christian trivia, the answer is usually Jesus.
I'm going to say a couple hundred, like 200 maybe.
Pretty good. 266.
Okay, yeah, actually, I thought about saying 250, but yeah. I mean, I was in the ballpark. You know?
Ballpark,
you're good. I didn't say like 40 or 1,000, so you know, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, you're within an order of magnitude, so that's great if you're an astronomer.
Yeah.
All right, now, ever since the beginning of the papal tradition, celibacy has been a strong component of being the Pope. That being said, how many popes have fathered illegitimate children during their time as Pope?
That's good. This is just going to be a complete and utter guess. I'll say 37.
Oh, you're overestimating almost by an order of magnitude. At least 4.
Okay, so it's not as widespread as I thought. Maybe it would have just been really comical to me if it was like 75 of them.
262.
Well, it's like obviously, like I would say for the past probably 100 years or so, probably none.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously. But I mean, it kind of would have been funny if, like, during the 12 or 1300s or something like that, it was just sort of a thing that was just sort of generally accepted as, well, they're not supposed to do it, but they're just doing it.
Right.
You know, popes are going to be popes, you know?
Pope's gonna pope. And by the way, as a fun fact, at least 9 other popes are believed to have been sexually active during the papacy, but did not produce any children.
Well, that's, I mean, you know, good for them.
Good for them.
Good for those guys.
Hey, I'm all about sex positivity, even if you're the Pope. Okay, so of those illegitimate children, how many of those illegitimate children went on to become Pope later in life?
All 4 of them.
No, only one of them.
That's really funny.
So Pope Sergius III had an affair with a woman named Marozia, who gave birth to a child who would go on to become Pope John XI.
Get it, Sergio?
Yeah. And that just goes to show you that even if the Catholic Church condemns you, you might still grow up to be the Pope.
Well, his dad, Sergio or whatever, he totally played the system. He won the game.
Yeah.
It's like, suck it. Not only am I going to go and do this thing I'm not supposed to do, but the direct result of that thing I'm not supposed to do is going to be Pope too.
Right. So this will be good. So we're going to be talking about a couple of the interesting popes throughout history, and that Pope Sergius III is definitely going to be on the list.
Glad to.
Let's talk just a little bit about the papacy first to give some background to this. So, Pope is basically just a job title, like President or Caesar. The Pope is the head of the Catholic Church, as well as the head of state of Vatican City, which is the only theocracy in Europe.
I'm glad there's only just that one.
Right, and it's not a real state, it's a pseudo-state.
Yeah, it's quite enough.
Yeah.
I don't need any more than that.
No. I wish there weren't even the one, but...
Right, yeah.
The Pope is supposedly chosen by God, and then a 2/3 majority vote by the Papal Conclave.
That's not correct. It's definitely not. There's definitely a bunch of dudes who choose who it's going to be.
Right.
And by dudes, I mean specifically men.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We should also mention the topic of Papal Infallibility.
Oh my God. It's so stupid.
So, Papal Infallibility has been variously discussed and defended since the Middle Ages, but wasn't officially declared dogmatically until the First Vatican Council in 1869. Unfortunately, the Catholic Church doesn't claim that everything the Pope says is infallible, and they also haven't explained how you can tell when the Pope is speaking infallibly,
right?
Nor have they given a list of the things the Pope has said that were infallible. So I suppose we're just left guessing as to what's infallible and what isn't.
Right. They just have that kind of hanging out there, so it's just kind of like, you never know. He might be.
It might be infallible.
Might be totally correct on this. You never know. Be careful if you try to argue with him, because you never know.
Yeah. Probably just the way it works is the stuff that he said that turned out to be true. Yeah, he was saying that infallibly. Yeah. But the other stuff, he wasn't infallible when he said that stuff. He was just kidding.
Right.
He was being simultaneously infallible and sarcastic.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, purgatory totally doesn't exist anymore, guys.
Yeah, I love that. I love that when there's big... I mean, I've kind of mentioned this before, but like something that you just, like if your religion were true, there's no way you could be wrong about this. Like there's no way you could have that egregious of an error in your doctrine.
I know.
if you had any real like supernatural premise to what you're talking about, other than just a bunch of stuff that was invented by men. And purgatory is one of those things. It's like for so long, everybody thought like this was the case. And now it turns out it's like, oh no, actually it's not. So, because we all just kind of changed our minds, I guess. How could that happen? That can't happen, is the answer to that.
Yes, I reject that as a possibility.
Yeah. And who told you? Did we just figure that out? Was there a revelation? Why is it that God let us go on for so long thinking one thing when really another thing is correct? And then why is it that today he just kind of took, oh, hey, by the way, guys, that whole purgatory thing, it's not really real, so don't worry about that anymore. You couldn't possibly have that mistake if you actually had anything real about it.
JK about that purgatory stuff.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that my dad has told me that when he was in a Catholic school, he was taught that the Pope is infallible about all issues pertaining to morality and doctrine.
Wonderful. Well, I hope he's doing his homework, because...
Eric, when you were Catholic, were you taught anything about papal infallibility?
I mean, it's something that I remember being mentioned, but there was no emphasis on it at my school. We would take religion classes and stuff like that, but I don't remember ever having that been like a point that was like really driven home or emphasized for any reason. It's definitely been an idea that I've been familiar with for a long, long time, though, like into my childhood. So
Gotcha. All right, so let's start to go over some of these great popes then. Let's start with Pope Formosus, who was pope from 891 to 896. Now, there's basically nothing of interest that happened while this guy was pope. All the interesting things that happened after he died. So a year after his death, which is about 2 popes later, Pope Stephen VI exhumed Formosa's body.
Stephen?
He exhumed Formosa's body, dressed his desiccated corpse in the proper papal attire, and put his body on trial.
That's nuts. That's insane.
Yeah, it totally is. The trial, unfortunately, did not go very well for Formosa because he was found to have been unworthy of the papal office.
He wasn't able to defend himself either.
No, I don't think he probably wasn't given a state lawyer either. Yo, where's my phone call?
Yeah, damn, that sucks.
He was found to have been unworthy of the papal office, and all the acts and measures put in place during his time as pope were declared null and void.
Damn, that sucks.
At the end of the trial, they tore off his papal clothes and decided that the 3 fingers he used in his now considered illegitimate consecrations didn't need to be there, and those 3 fingers were cut off from his body.
So how long after he was dead?
A year after he was dead. So they
just got a year-old semi-moist but drying out corpse just sitting in the courtroom, and they're like tearing its...
Dressed in pope clothes.
Right, and they're tearing its fingers off and stuff. Gross.
Link to this. There's an awesome painting that I saw on Wikipedia of this corpse in like what looked like regal gowns and robes and stuff being accused. There's some guy like pointing his finger at him and shouting like some aggressive prosecutor or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at that painting now. It's really good, actually. It's a great painting.
This
dead guy sitting in like this thing that looks like a throne. It's really funny.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah. So they concluded the court proceedings, as one does, by throwing the body into a river. So after that, Formosa's body was later retrieved by some monk, and after Stephen VI died, the body was reburied at St. Peter's Basilica.
Well, that's nice.
And they decided that putting dead popes on trial was banned.
Shouldn't do that anymore.
Now, you'd think that would be enough for a dead pope, but subsequent popes did not agree. The 8th pope after Formosa, named Sergius III, dug up the body again.
He's the same guy?
A different living pope, but the same dead pope, dug up the body again, put him on trial again, found him guilty again, and this time had him beheaded.
Wow. God, I'm glad I wasn't alive at all back then.
I know.
Glad that I lived in the 2000s and not the 800s, because holy shit.
Yeah. And interestingly, no one seems to know what happened to the body after that.
They just like threw it out behind the courtroom. Just tossed it out in the back. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Funny stuff.
Now, was that Sergius or whatever, the same Sergius that had what we were talking? Oh, he had a kid and then his kid became pope. Is that the same guy?
Yes. Pope Sergius III, who's already come up in our trivia game as being someone who had a kid. Yes, that was the second guy to dig up Pope Formosus and put him on trial.
That's my favorite pope of all time. Sergius III. It couldn't get any better than that. There won't be a better pope.
Yeah.
Ever.
So let's move on to Pope Sergius III then, who was pope from 904 to 911 and is known as the father of the only illegitimate child who grew up to be pope.
That's so good. Good for him.
Good for him.
I'm proud of him.
His affair with Marozia wasn't some bizarre outlier in his life, as you might guess from the fact that he was the second person to dig up a pope and put him on trial. In fact, Sergius III's reign as pope ushered in what some historians have called the Saeculum Obscurum, which is Latin for the Dark Ages, also sometimes called the pornocracy.
That's weird.
This period is characterized by the papacy being heavily influenced by groups of prostitutes, as well as by a handful of powerful aristocratic families.
That's kind of funny. Prostitutes?
Prostitutes and money.
I mean, I guess, like, those guys are supposed to be celibate, so, after a while, after you go so long, maybe your judgment skills sort of go out the window, and the first hot-looking prostitute that comes up to you, you're just gonna take her word for whatever.
Yo, baby, you want to take a spin in the infallible chair?
Yeah, no way. I don't want to do that. Whatever that means.
All right, so let's fast forward now to Pope Benedict Ix, who was pope from 1042 to 1048. He's the only person to have been pope more than once in his life, and the only person to have sold the papacy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? I think I've heard about that before. All this shit's hilarious to me.
Oh, it totally is.
Because I just think the position of pope is so stupid in the first place that, like, just learning about all the wacky shit that's gone on in the position over the years, it just amuses me to no end.
Totally. So, Benedict IX was 20 when he first became pope, making him also one of the youngest popes in history. And as a fun fact, there are some sources that say he was actually 11 or 12. We aren't entirely sure.
Damn.
Yeah. On many occasions during his papacy, he was accused of rape, murder, and adultery. So in 1044, he was forced out of his office, only to return a year later and reclaim it under military force.
Nice.
He then held the office for a month before selling it to his godfather.
I wonder what he charged him. Like with inflation, of course. I wonder what that would go for today.
Yeah, I wonder. So he kicked out his predecessor and regained the papal throne again under, understandably, very harsh public protest, only to be exiled from Rome entirely in 1048.
Damn, that's kind of funny.
The German historian Ferdinand Gregorius wrote of Benedict saying, quote, "It seems as if a demon from hell, in the disguise of a priest, occupied the chair of Peter and profaned the sacred mysteries of religion by his insolent courses," unquote.
I don't think that that's actually what happened.
That's what Ferdinand said.
I wonder why God would allow that to happen.
I don't know.
That's the most important chair you ever made, God, and you're going to let a demon sit in it? What's the matter with you?
Another interesting note here, no one actually knows how, when, or where he died, but it's widely speculated that it involved him seeking the papal office for a fourth term.
That's it. That's enough. We're not letting this guy come back. We're not. No. We've done this enough times already. We got to get rid of him. That wouldn't surprise me.
No. So, onward now to...
Really, at this point, nothing could surprise me if we're talking about we've dug up the same guy twice to put him on trial after he's been dead for a number of years.
That really sets the bar pretty high, doesn't it?
I don't really know what could surprise me at this point in the story.
All right, there's another pope, Pope Boniface VIII.
Yeah, most people would say Boniface, I think.
Boniface?
Boniface.
I'm going to say it with a Boston accent. Hey, what are you doing, Boniface?
Boniface. Nice.
He was pope from 1294 to 1303. So a little bit of historical context here. King Philip IV of France was fighting a bunch of wars, and these were really expensive, so to help pay for them, he decided to tax the clergy. So Boniface did not like this at all because it meant less money in his pocket, and he wrote the Unam Sanctum, which declared that all spiritual and temporal powers belonged to the Pope, and that every king was subordinate to the church.
Nice. I like that.
Absolutely.
Hey, guess what? Turns out I'm actually in charge.
I'm the boss.
Yeah. You know, you think you're in charge? Well, it turns out you're not. I am.
Right.
Why? Because I said so.
What are you going to do? How are you going to argue? I'm infallible.
Yeah.
He actually went on to declare that in order to achieve salvation, a person needs to be subject to the authority of the Roman pontiff.
Yeah, I've heard this before.
So pretty high stakes here for anyone who wants to go against the Catholic Church.
When you're in that position and that many people believe it for whatever reason, you know, you can pretty much say whatever you want. Anybody anymore can just be like, well, if you do that, you're going to go to hell.
Right.
You know, and how can I argue with you? Because, you know, God or whatever. It just kind of sounds like some shit that people would say today.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
On a smaller scale, you know.
I mean, it's basically an earlier version of the prosperity gospel.
Sure.
Man, I really hope you get to go to heaven, but it's going to really depend on whether or not you give me some money.
Yeah. Would you like to buy some indulgences?
Right, yeah.
Really go a long way for your eternal soul, you know.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, the whole unum sanctum thing is considered to be an infallible declaration of the Catholic Church.
Until somebody makes an infallible declaration that says that one
was only halfway infallible.
This more recent infallibility supersedes all previous infallibilities in the case of unum sanctums.
Yeah, so King Philip responded to the unum sanctum by not letting any money flow from France to Rome, effectively putting a big tariff on the Franco-Roman trade at the time.
You mean not letting any money go from Rome to France? Because the French guy was trying to get money to fund his wars.
No, King Philip of France said that no money's allowed to go from France to Rome.
So he basically said, all right, well, if that's how you're going to play, we ain't giving you no more money from us anymore either.
Yeah, that's right. And so Boniface decided he needed that money for his Catholic stuff, and France was a big tither at the time.
For cathedrals and whatnot.
Yeah, I know. And so Boniface said, all right, you can tax the church in emergencies only, like when you're trying to fund expensive and frivolous wars.
Right.
But I still get all the spiritual powers.
Against England, again.
Right.
Your most recent frivolous war with England.
All right, and so papally onward to Leo X, who was pope from 1513 to 1521. He was the pope during the height of the Catholic Church selling indulgences in order to get more money.
Yeah, this is the good stuff.
So indulgences, for anyone who's not aware with this term, that's where you let people pay money to the church on top of any other tithing in order to get your sins forgiven. Which is a great little scheme that they had going on for many hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, there was basically people who worked for the church who were like used car salesmen. And they would come up with little slogans and sales pitches and stuff to try to get people to spend more money on indulgences. You know?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know, almost like loan sharks or something like that today would be the equivalent. But yeah, that kind of practice has been going on for a really long time.
Exactly.
Like, the big reason why I know a lot of this stuff already without, you know, doing any research for the show, surprise, is that I had a really great history teacher in high school when I took advanced placement modern European history. And so I enjoyed learning a lot of this stuff and still remember it today. But he told us that there was a guy who was a really famous seller of indulgences, and he had like a slogan. It said something like, each time that a coin in the coffer shall ring, a soul up into heaven shall spring, or something like that. So, you know, like that was a thing that, like in England, that was a thing that somebody was running around saying to try to get people to like pay more money to the church as like an insurance policy for their immortal souls, which I just think is hilarious.
Yeah, every time your money becomes my money, God gives you a big thumbs up.
Right. Yeah. People have been conning other people out of their money for a long time. It's not new just because you're hearing about it, you know, today.
Right, yeah. And note, his reign during 1513 to 1521 makes him the pope when Martin Luther posted the 95 Theses in 1517.
That's an important day in the history of the Catholic Church.
Exactly. Now, with all of the tithing and all the indulgences that the Catholic Church was raking in at the time, he had tons of cash, which led, perhaps expectedly, to a very extravagant lifestyle, which pissed off a lot of people, especially his bishops, which were not allowed to enjoy Leo's swimming pool full of gold, champagne, and peasant tears.
Right.
So a small group of his bishops started to conspire against Leo, and he found out about this, and suddenly all of them died of food poisoning.
Wow. That's like some mafia shit right there. I mean, I guess they are Italian, so, you know, surprise. Sorry, that's racist.
Eric, Italians are not a race.
Culturally insensitive.
So interestingly, Pope Leo X contracted malaria and died so suddenly that his last sacraments couldn't be administered. And I've been too lazy to look up what that means. So Eric, what does that mean?
You know what? I've heard of that, and I just don't remember.
Oh, come on, you're my Catholic answer man.
Sorry, I know I've heard that term before, but I can't remember.
Don't make me fucking Wikipedia this.
That's something that happens all the time, though, I feel like, with not just popes and stuff. If some dude is about to die in the hospital, and they'll have the priest go in the room with him and read him his last rites and stuff like that before he dies, just so he can kind of make final peace with God before he goes up to meet St. Peter or St. Paul or whoever it is that stands at the pearly gates. We've had that discussion before. I can't remember which one it is, but I would imagine that that's what it would be.
Yeah, I think that's right. So that's all the fun popes that I ended up researching. Eric, do you have any cool papal stuff to tell us?
Well, not really. I kind of did some reading about the Papal Schism, or the Great Schism, which I referenced it at some point. I couldn't remember exactly what happened. I just remember that, basically France hijacked the papacy. And I couldn't remember if they actually, went and kidnapped the guy or something, or if it was something, super exciting or dramatic. But really it wasn't. It was basically just the cardinals elected the pope, because that's how it works. The breakdown in Catholic school of the hierarchy of the church was basically there's and you're just the lowest level. They didn't really put it in those terms, so that's what it is. And then there's the priests. And then the priests are all part of a diocese. And then there's a bishop that's in charge of every diocese. And then there's a bunch of bishops that have a cardinal who's in charge of them. And there's not very many of those at all. But then the cardinals are the people who elect the pope. So the cardinals, the people who do the voting and whatnot, they elected this pope. He was living in France at the time, or working in France or something. And he basically decided, well, I'm the pope now, but I'm not going back to Rome. I'm staying here. And so now all of a sudden the pope lives in France. And the cardinals were like, we're not having that. Screw that. So what they did was they just elected another pope and said that the other pope didn't count. But the other guy who was already elected pope was like, well, screw that. Yeah, I still count. I'm still the pope. You elected me first. So basically the cardinals elected two popes, and they just kind of created this confusion. And the pope basically lived in France for a while. And I mean, back in the day, that was a big deal, though, because there are still people today who actually give a shit about what the pope says. Imagine 700 years ago when this happened, basically everybody was Catholic back then. I mean, on Western Europe, on the Western side of things,
Yeah, I mean, right now the pope rules over a tiny swath of a medium to large city in Italy. At that time, the Holy Roman Empire was, a third of Europe?
Well, right, yeah. I mean, France was definitely a sovereign nation back then, and England was definitely a sovereign nation. Spain was more or less a sovereign nation. I think it was still fairly, fragmented, but that area was still, you could loosely refer to it as Spain. I think you could probably get away with that.
That was Castile.
Sure, yeah. And Portugal was sort of part of that for a while. I don't remember when they broke off, but basically the area that's now Germany was called the Holy Roman Empire. And then there was also Prussia. I don't know exactly when Belgium or Austria would have popped up, but basically the whole area was just all less countries than it is now, and they were all Catholic. And that was it. It wasn't like today when there's several different options for what you want your religion to be. It was basically Catholicism is the only way to look at the world and wake up in the morning and try to make sense of it.
Right.
So if you have one pope telling you one thing and another pope telling you another thing, that's going to be the cause of some great turmoil in your personal life when you're trying to figure out how to, unless you've got a good indulgence salesman nearby, you might not be sure about what's going to happen to you when you die.
He's a family friend and he cuts you a good deal.
Right. But I mean, I don't think the sale of indulgences was actually going on yet when the Papal Schism happened. So I'm going to say that lasted for 80 years or so. 8 or 9 popes or something like that. And then they were they had a council and they were like, okay, Pope back to Rome. And that's it. That's final. And then it was over. But yeah, I mean, just thinking of the popes that I can remember in my lifetime. I mean, John Paul II was my first pope. You always remember your first.
You always remember your first, yeah.
That's inappropriate. But so John Paul II was the first pope when I was born. And when he died, I remember everybody made a really big deal of it. A lot of people really missed him. They credited him with a lot of things that I don't recall him ever hearing about him doing while he was alive. But they basically said he won the Cold War and stuff like that. They basically everybody really liked him.
He was the first person to synthesize insulin and all sorts of great stuff. I don't think that was him.
Yeah, I don't know about that. And then I just remember the ho-hum response that Benedict got when he took over after John Paul was gone. He was this guy was in Hitler Youth. He kind of resembles Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. He's kind of this creepy old crazy guy. He's covering up a lot of rape scandals and stuff like that. And a lot of people think that he should be arrested. And so that didn't go so well. And then he just quit, which is hilarious to me that you can do that because you're supposed to be. We've already sort of discussed how this isn't actually true. But according to the doctrines, the Pope is chosen by God. So it's really funny that you can be chosen by God for this job that you're supposed to have for the rest of your life and then just be I'm gonna retire. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of funny.
So yeah, like there was memes, had the picture of his face and it was like chosen by God, retired, something like that. I can't remember.
Quits.
Yeah, that's amusing to me. And then the guy they have now, I'll be fair, like when he first took over, this is fairly recently because we were doing the podcast when this happened. So it's been, a couple years ago, less than a couple years ago. And when he started, I remember there was some quotes that surfaced that apparently were attributed to him. And I think they were like from the past, like not recently, but like this guy's the Pope now. Here's what he said 10 years ago, something like that. And he said some sort of questionable things about homosexuality. And I don't even remember what he said, but it was kind of like you kind of roll your eyes and go, okay, here we go again, more of a homophobia coming from the Catholic Church. But recently, to his credit, he's actually been pretty cool. I don't really have any issues with him. Again, I don't necessarily know what's going on in Africa right now with what we were talking about earlier with what are they saying today about contraceptives and things of that nature in Africa, which would be probably the biggest problem that I would have with the Catholic Church. So should probably find out about that. But as far as like homosexuality and stuff, problems that are like closer to home, I suppose, which doesn't make them more important, obviously, but they're, it's the things that are in the news. Because it's not in Africa, because nobody cares about what goes on in Africa, because that's just the way the world is. But, he's been pretty friendly about gay people, and he's pretty much said, if you're gay or you're an atheist or whatever, it's not my place to say whether or not you're going to go to heaven or hell or whatever. Like, if you're a good person, like that's all you can do, and that's cool. Which that sounds a lot more like a sane person talking to me.
Yeah, I would say this pope seems a little bit more sane, a little bit more friendly to the non-Catholic community compared to previous popes. The one thing that actually bugs me a lot is there was the whole terrorist attack in France recently against the magazine Charlie Hebdo
or whatever.
Charlie Hebdo. I don't know how to.
I don't know if I'm saying that right. Yeah, it's like Hebdo, I think is what it is. Yeah.
But one of the things that Pope Francis, the current pope, said was they basically brought this against themselves because you're not allowed to make fun of religion. Faith is something that just can't be made fun of or something like that. And they're like, no, don't say that. That's stupid.
Bill Donahue said that. Are you sure it was the Pope who said that? Because I heard Bill Donahue said that.
They may both have said that. There's no reason to think they didn't both say that.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Did you know that two people can say the same thing?
Yes, I know. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't misattributing something to the Pope that was actually said by Bill Donahue, because we have spoken about Bill Donahue in the past and how just big of a complete and utter jackass he is, and how I just can't imagine there's any human alive who hears the shit that comes out of that man's mouth and then agrees with it, because everything I've ever heard him say has just been the most disgusting and idiotic bullshit I can imagine. Because Bill Donahue basically said, like, well, the people at that magazine or like who make that publication basically like, yeah, what did you think was going to happen? You brought that on yourself. You deserve that. It's total bullshit, because he started out with saying like, okay, obviously like terrorism's not cool and you shouldn't do that, but that little extra, that but is really, really important, actually. Like, it's either okay or it's not. It's not okay for them to do this, but you shouldn't behave this way to bring it on. It's either okay or it's not okay. Whatever I'm doing is irrelevant. You can't blame me for it if I'm the satirist, so I think Bill Donahue's an idiot, and if you're going to say that the terrorists had an excuse for what they did, then you're a slimeball, and that's pretty much what I think he is.
Yeah, way to blame the victim.
Right, yeah. And they're like the American Catholic League or something like that, which who knows? Who knows what that even means? All I know is he's a guy who goes on the news sometimes and says stupid things, and then he claims to be a Catholic, which if I were still a Catholic, I would absolutely hate him. I would be like, this guy doesn't speak for me. He's an idiot. In summary, Bill Donahue's an idiot. I can't stand him. I think he sucks. If I were a Catholic, I would be absolutely horrified every time he opened his mouth, because because he would be giving me a bad name, essentially. Like, I feel bad for the Catholics who are not crazy, because Bill Donahue exists and makes them all look like they're batshit insane. So that's what I have to say about Bill Donahue, I guess.
Well, anyway, is that it for us, Eric?
I think so. I think that's enough. Ending with a rant about Bill Donahue and how awful and hideous he is, I think is a good way to.
That's good.
Good way to wrap things up.
Absolutely. This was a good episode that we didn't take very seriously.
You're going to make me send us off here in a second. I don't even know.
Eric, infallibly send us off.
I was infallible when I said all those things about British people and the South and etiquette coaches. So, we're good on that.
Goodbye, British listeners. Cheerio.
Sorry for being so rude earlier. Actually, I'm not. I take that back. Bible-thumping, evolution-denying moron.